I'm really, lately, been really in love with the universe because I really realize how much the universe loves us and how everything is so exacting. And so I've decided lately, I don't even need the oars. I just can be in the canoe without the oars.
Because you've already established, it's already been asked for, and it's already been answered. So letting go of the oars stops resistance, and off you go to the precision of what you have been incrementally asking for. Yes.
I'm really knowing that life is really easy, and that I just kind of have gotten my own way. Okay, here's a question I have. I would like to know how to be happier being happy. Because actually when the doctor got up here, he was actually helping me because, see, I have a daughter and she's like 23, and when she was really young, I didn't want her to have the same kind of life that I had, so I made sure I went out of my way to make sure she was happy. And I would sing her a song for 6 years of her life and tell her she was good and wonderful and that she was loved. I did that almost every day for 6 years. And when her 5th birthday party, I gave her like 5 birthday parties. I went bend over backwards that she was going to have a different life with me. Well, you know, she's 23, she just graduated college. The other day I went over to do something fun with her, and she was so sad. And I cannot handle it when my daughter gets sad. And for 2 days, I was going through a lot that she was sad. And then I was doing the Abraham, and I asked, and then all of a sudden I had a realization that if someone came up to me and said, you know, we'll take away your sadness, we'll take away your tears, you can just be happy-go-lucky all the time. I'd say, get it away from me, because I need my emotions to have a catalyst to break through, because it's so fun when you break through.
Or say it another way. My emotions are necessary for me to know the direction of my real choices.
Okay.
In other words, your emotions are not the catalyst for the breakthrough. They're the indicator of whether you're following the breakthrough or not.
Oh, great. Yes. So I still have it in my vibration of how do you let yourself be really happy even when those around you are sad?
Well, you've really presented something wonderful here, because you've given us all of the answers within your question, and we're going to reflect them back to you.
Okay, thanks.
And you will feel it fully.
Okay.
So, first let's start with your awareness the other day that your 23-year-old daughter in that moment was not happy. And the sadness that brought about in you. Now, you have to realize that through all that you've been living around her, that you have even outside of those birthday parties and outside of the 6 years you were singing happy songs to her, every day of your experience with her, you've had some exposure to life that's caused you to put a better feeling to you piece of her in your vibrational escrow. In other words, you care about her. You care about how she is. So you have, whether you know it or not, created through the synthesizing of life, your version, your new and improved version, and you have the right to do that with anything that you give your attention to, not only with that which you give birth to. You have put your new and improved version of that into your vibrational escrow. Now, when you're not with her, when you remember her happy, when you imagine her happy, or when you focus upon things other than her, in other words, as long as you are not in any moment doing something to contradict what you've already put in that vibrational escrow, you're flowing downstream. That's the equivalent of letting go of the oars. In other words, she's helped you put it there. You've helped you put it there. It's there, your version. And when you're not doing anything to contradict that version relative to that subject, you feel happy, joy, alignment, fulfillment, ease. So when you look at her and she's not happy, it feels like if she would in that moment be happy, then you could observe her in her happiness. Your observation of her happy moment and what's in your vibrational escrow would be a match. So she's behaving in a way that causes you to have easy alignment, and you say, very good daughter. You're being just the way I need want you to be. Because when you're that way, I have no work to do other than just observe you. And in your happy beingness, I align with my quest relative to you. Now let's go back to in those early years of her early life and your desire. It was big then. It's bigger now, but it was big then. But then you felt, and most parents do, that you were responsible for her happiness. And so you feathered her nest. You did whatever you could. You tried to control the circumstances of her environment so that you would be the catalyst in that moment for her to line up with what was in her vibrational escrow. Now hear that. Don't you think that's a wonderful acknowledgement? In other words, through her life, she'd already put plenty of things in vibrational escrow. You stood on your head in as many different ways as you could, held her attention, and tried to be the reason for her to line up with her vibrational escrow. Only problem with that is, can't always be there. That's what we mean when we say most people are looking for love in all the wrong places. In other words, you didn't mean to, but you for a time trained her into holding you as her object of attention, and it's easy for people to begin counting on. In other words, when you do that and do it really well, the first time they meet someone who doesn't do that, they think something's gone really wrong. And all that's happened is they have not yet discovered that the only place that true happiness is in the alignment with oneself to oneself, you see. So now you've sort of come full circle. So you worked hard to keep her happy, and as long as you were able to, you were happy. That's sort of the story that you're telling us. But if she should not be happy, then you cannot be happy, which is what gives most people the feeling that they have this responsibility to control the conditions. In other words, if my happiness depends on her happiness, then I better be really good at making sure that she's happy so that I can be happy. And we say, possible maybe, if you've only got one person that you're working with there. It's possible that you could have 5 birthday parties. That's possible. It's possible that you could sing enough songs. It's possible that you could withdraw your attention from enough other things and give it only to this one thing. It's possible that you could maintain it for a while. But isn't it nicer when you discover the freedom of being happy whether she is or not? Now, this is a tricky thing. This is what we want you to hear. You see, even if your happiness feels like it is dependent upon her being happy, we want you to understand that in your vibrational escrow, she is happy. So all you have to do is focus there where the whole of you is. Esther says to us several times in every day. During the segment of lunch, she said it a few times again. Abraham, how do you see this? How do you see this? Because she knows that if she is looking at things in a way different from the way we see it, that she will, in that difference, be, to some degree, separating herself from who she really is. Because we see it as she is really in vibrational escrow. So, having heard all of that, here's what we would encourage you to do. So when you are having a conversation and you are aware that your daughter is sad, it's not a hard thing to know what it is that's bothering her, is it? She's very verbal about it. So you know what she doesn't want, which means it's easy for you to extrapolate what she does want. And you know what you don't want. You don't want her miserable. So it's easy for you to identify what you do want. So really, your happiness is not dependent upon what she does. Your happiness is dependent upon the story you tell. Now, does that feel incredibly selfish? So let me see if I have that straight. Never mind that she's miserable and never mind what she's doing. Just tell a story to myself that makes me feel good. And tell me again, how does that help her? Well, it may not help her this red hot minute, But if you're not selfish enough to line up with your true picture of who she is, you can't be an influence for her to find the happiness that both you and she seek for herself. In other words, that, and the reason that you feel unhappy when she's unhappy is not because she's unhappy. The reason that you feel unhappy when she's unhappy is because you're looking at something different from the way who you really are is looking at it. And the reason she feels unhappy is because she's looking at it in the way who she really isn't looking at it. In other words, it's the same story over and over again. So if you be unhappy when she's unhappy, now you're using her not lining up with who she is as your excuse to not line up with who you are. Isn't it interesting? All you all want is just to be who you are. And it is so annoying when people do not behave in ways that make that easy. And yet, we got to tell you, we would far rather there be people in your life who are not willing to stand on their head in order to evoke happiness from you because they train you away from your guidance system and they make you incapable of lining up with who you are because you're trying to line up with them and them and them and them and them, and they won't stand still long enough. You see. So what do you do now from where you are? You just start from where you are. Don't go back to that birthday party. Don't go back to any time before. Just start with where you are right now and just ask yourself, relative to what you talked about with your daughter the other day, what story about that lines you up with who you are? The story that says she can't find her way, she doesn't quite know what to do, she's not sure, she can't find the person to love her, she doesn't not know what to do with her. In other words, those stories, they're not separating her from her, they're separating you from you. You got to tell a story that puts you back together. See? Can you think of what it might be?
Well, what I did do was just tell her that would she want anyone taking away her feelings? She goes, you're right, no. And I let go. I let go a little bit. So I would say that she's found her way really great. She doesn't really need me to hold her hand. It's okay to take some of that energy and time I've put into her and put it into my own life. And
well, now you're off the subject.
Oh, okay.
Because it's the subject of her unhappiness that you're wanting to come into alignment with.
Well, okay.
You started out really good.
Thanks.
You said she's been finding her way all right, and she doesn't really need me.
She doesn't really. I could see the times when she is happy.
But remember, now think about what we've been talking about here, because you have the ability to right now be much more focused and deliberate and dynamic than you're being. The water's just a little muddy here, but think about everything that you've heard from us here today. Do you believe that you have a vibrational escrow? You said it when you sat down. You said,
yes,
I want to talk about number 2. I want to talk about step 2. I want to talk about that escrow that's being tended by source energy. So you believe that it's there. And do you believe that your version of your daughter and her wonderful life are in your vibrational escrow?
Yes.
And do you believe that you've been putting that there incrementally as you've had the pleasure of interacting with her for all of these years?
Yes.
So do you think that you know with some sort of vivid detail what you want relative to her well-being?
Yes, more.
And do you think that the source within you has got a really good bead on that and has offered a vibration around that? In other words, do you think that that is already lined up and is there? Then make some effort in an emphatic way to describe that. In other words, what we're getting at.
Okay, I got it.
Look here in this direction for just a little bit. Here is what we really want you to feel the difference of. There's a big difference between looking at her where she is, which is vivid and bold, and is getting your goat. In other words, it's vivid and it's real, but there's a big difference between looking there where she is and looking here where your vibrational escrow is. And what we want you all to sort of come to a determination about is that you're going to stop telling that story. That is the easiest story in the world to tell because she'll give you more words for it every day you talk to her. That is such an easy story. It's so easy to tell the story of complaining. It's so easy to tell the story of what's wrong. It's so easy to tell that story. But that's not the story that your inner being is telling. And as long as you tell that story will tear you apart, you see.